Come, child, let your eyes grow heavy. Listen to the soft, steady patter of the rain against the glass, and let yourself drift while I tell you a story. The neon sign above the door didn't just flicker. It buzzed with the irritable cadence of a giant, trapped horsefly. It read the Devil's Pawn Shop in choked red glass, though directly beneath it, etched into the grime of the transom window, were 5 distinct sentences. Need revenge? Luck. Love. Trade one piece of your soul. Everyone regrets their purchase. Julian stood on the wet, salt-caked pavement, his shoes soaking up the cold drizzle of a Tuesday midnight. The street was dead, wrapped in a damp, slate-gray fog that smelled curiously like scorched toast and old copper pennies. He was a bankrupt accountant with a talent for picking horses that broke their legs in the final stretch. He pushed the door open. A brass bell chimed with a low, vibrating hum that made his molars throb. Behind the cracked glass counter sat a pale clerk holding a heavy brass device that resembled a train conductor's ticket punch. "I need luck," Julian said, his voice trembling in the quiet room. "One piece of your soul," the clerk rustled, his voice like dead autumn leaves dragged across concrete. "A simple transaction. Do it." Click. The sound snapped inside Julian's skull like a dry velvet thread snapping under tension. The clerk placed the ticket punch on the counter, grabbed a battered coat, and walked straight out the door without another word. Julian stood there, blinking into the quiet, feeling completely normal. No sudden cosmic light, no sudden wave of magic. He reached into his coat pocket and found only a crumpled receipt and 2 pennies. "Unbelievable," Julian muttered, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I got scammed by a fake pawn shop." He stormed out into the falling rain. But 3 blocks down, his wet shoe kicked something metallic. He looked down. A heavy, antique 18-karat gold signet ring was resting right on top of a storm drain, caught on a stray twig. An hour later, he bought a scratch-off ticket at a gas station with loose change and walked out with $5,000 in cash. By Friday, a forgotten distant relative passed away, leaving him a mortgage-free brownstone in the city. It was extraordinary. It was effortless. And yet, by the end of the month, a strange, creeping numbness settled in his chest. The initial thrill evaporated, replaced by a hollow, gnawing ache, a perpetual, quiet void where his satisfaction used to live. No matter how much money he won or how smoothly his life went, he felt endlessly, agonizingly unsatisfied. Even worse, the world around him seemed to be rotting. When he stayed at his friend Marcus's house for a weekend, Marcus dropped a kitchen knife on his foot, clipping an artery, while his wife slipped on the stairs and broke her collarbone. When Julian took a cozy job at a small firm, the company went bankrupt 3 weeks later after an electrical fire destroyed the building, though Julian's corner office remained untouched, and his severance check was mistakenly printed for twice the amount. It hit him on a foggy Tuesday midnight. The horrors weren't accidents. Desperate, Julian sprinted back down the alley, searching for the choked red neon light. He needed to trade it back. He needed his soul whole again. He reached the spot, but there was no pawn shop. Just a blank, windowless brick wall covered in damp moss. Looking for the clerk. Julian whipped around. Standing under the street lamp was a woman in a slick black trench coat. She was holding an immaculate, unblemished diamond the size of a plum, but her face was pale, and her eyes were dark, hollow, and utterly exhausted. "It's gone," she said, her voice flat and echoing with that same terrible, vacant coldness Julian felt in his own chest. "It moves. You can't give it back." "What did he do to us?" Julian breathed, stepping toward her. "Why do I feel like this? Why does everyone around me get hurt?" "Because luck isn't created out of thin air, Julian. It's a vacuum," she whispered, looking at him with pity. "To make you untouchable, the universe harvests every scrap of chance from the people nearby. We are parasites of fortune. And the piece of soul we traded, that was our capacity to feel peace. We will wander forever, desperately wanting to end it, but our luck will never let us die." Julian stared at her, the horrific truth settling into his bones. "So what happens now?" he asked. "What happens when 2 people with absolute, ravenous luck stand in the exact same spot?" The woman opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, a sudden, unnatural, violent gale whipped through the narrow alley. Crack! Above them, the heavy steel fire escape of the adjacent building snapped off its iron bolts and plummeted toward the ground. At the exact same second, an overhead power transformer erupted in a blinding shower of blue sparks, snapping a thick, high-voltage cable that whipped down through the fog like a burning snake. Julian didn't move. Neither did the woman. The collapsing fire escape slammed into the ground, twisting into jagged scrap metal, missing Julian by less than an inch. The live high-voltage cable whipped wildly through the air, killing the lights of the entire city block, before bouncing harmlessly off the curb and landing in a deep puddle of water directly between their feet. Neither of them had a single scratch. Neither of them flinched. 2 blocks away, a sudden gas main explosion shattered the windows of an inhabited apartment complex. Down the street, 2 cars violently swerved to avoid the sudden blackout and collided head-on into a bus stop. The 2 immortals stood in the quiet destruction of the alleyway, perfectly safe, surrounded by the screaming sirens of a city suddenly collapsing into chaotic tragedy just to keep them both unharmed. The woman looked at Julian. The wire crackled harmlessly between them. "We can't stay together," she said quietly. "If we stay near each other, the universe will tear this entire city down to balance the equation." Julian looked down at his uninjured hands, feeling the silent, permanent void in his chest grow a little colder. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Somewhere empty," she murmured, turning her back on him and walking into the dark fog, "where there's no one left to bleed." Julian turned the opposite direction and walked into the night, perfectly untouchable, carrying a storm of silent catastrophe in his wake. And across the world, thousands just like them drift through the dark, unblemished and cursed, dropping to their knees under wet, empty skies clawing at the earth, crying out into the fog, begging the devil to please come back, take the rest of their soul, and finally let them perish. But the devil never answers a customer who has already paid. After all, the devil never makes a deal unless he walks away with an obscene profit, and by taking only a fraction of a soul, he leaves behind an immortal, walking engine of ruin that harvests hundreds of damned souls for him every single day. So close your eyes tight tonight. Little one, listen to the gentle rainfall on the glass, and rest easy knowing you are safe in your warm bed. Good night.